Hinduism is the religion of some 450 million people in South Asia. Geographically, it is cohesive, scarcely existent outside the Indian subcontinent, where it has flourished for more than 3,000 years. But coherence ends with geography, for under the rubric Hinduism, there coexist a seemingly unlimited range of religious expressions, a range that finds ample space for all of India's races, languages and literatures, classes and castes, the educated, sophisticated minorities, as well as the illiterate masses. Virtually nothing is excluded from the Hindu religious fold, and in fact, for several millennia, Hinduism has been mothering, assimilating, and synthesizing as its own the religious traditions of an astonishing variety of peoples, both alien and indigenous. Hinduism is intolerant. Intolerant of the claim to exclusiveness, to unique revelation that has propelled many other religions into competitive struggles for the intentions of history. If Hinduism has suffered at the expense of history, it is perhaps due to its incorrigible inclusiveness, the inclusiveness of a cosmic religion that understands time and space as manifestations of the sacred. Nothing may be left out, nothing ignored, if the world is divine utterance. If we are to understand anything at all about this amorphous entity, Hinduism, we must begin with the world, with the view, with the life of the Hindu villager. Not with literature or philosophy or theology or architecture, the obvious superstructure of Hinduism, but with the ground structure, the direct and basic sensitivity the Hindu villager feels for the eruptions of divine or demonic powers in his environment, for what we might call the fields of force in which he lives and moves and has his being. For the Hindu villager understands the dimensions and powers of the sacred. He relates his own success and failure to them. He touches base with them. We begin then with the elusive phenomena of folk religion. Despite increasing urbanization in the 20th century, the vast majority of Hindus live in small agriculturally focused villages. We arrive in this village, a village without temples, major shrines or images, religious books or acting priests, without the familiar landmarks of urban Hinduism. Yet, almost all of these villagers are Hindus. They take us to what appears to be a ruined foundation under a tree, well outside the village. But this is the residence of the village god, called simply the Lord of this place. Hinduism is resonant with such living fields of force. Outside of villages, there may be sacred groves of trees, dotted with active shrines. Such groves with pillar shrines are known among remnant tribal peoples, aboriginals, in many parts of India, and their presence in Hinduism, like the presence of many phenomena we are about to discuss, is a reminder of the power and primacy of prehistoric contributions. Trees themselves are sacred and receive auspicious vermilion markings, or offerings of flowers, incense, and water from these circumambulating women. Stones, too, have their sacred powers. Small ones in shrines, often lighted at night with oil lamps, or great boulders in the wilderness, marked as holy by paint and flags, sought by devoted pilgrims or accidental passers-by who may or may not know the names or the sacred stories of these stones, but who nevertheless leave offerings, bits of cloth, grains, perhaps coins, color, and reverently touch the mute but demonstrative symbol of the Lord of this place. Rivers, too, are sacred forces. A daily bath is at once a purificatory rite and an endowment with the powers of the river. And of course, the crop fields, the sometimes fertile, sometimes barren soils, are, like the seasons of rain and heat and cold, unpredictable. They are the seat of life-sustaining and life-denying energies that must be recognized. The world is teeming with ambiguous spirits and powers, such as the planets and the sun and the moon. And the village astrologer is a professional consulted by one and all. Shamans, healers, diviners, exorcists, soothsayers, practitioners of white and black magic, all assist the people in their quests to engage with benevolent, disengage from malevolent fields of force. All of these crafts are woven more or less inextricably into the fabric of Hinduism. Animals, too, may be manifestations of power. The tiger, worshipped by tribals in many forested regions, is the image here in this eclectic Hindu-Muslim shrine. Hanuman, the warrior, the monkey warrior of epic fame, has widespread cults in village India. And, of course, there is the ubiquitous cow, with a mystique all her own, an antiquity in mythology and ritual that predates the Indo-Aryan invasions, and an unshakable position as the focus of Hindu piety today. She is the expression of life's bounty, and her 5 products, milk, curds, clarified butter, dung, and urine, are symbols of all that is pure and holy. This deceased cow, draped in scarlet, has been carted by hand 25 miles from a village, then carried, strung from a pole down to the river to be given a ceremonial water burial in the sacred Ganges. The same ceremony, incidentally, as that accorded to a holy man, a sadhu, carried to the bottom by heavy sandbags. She is our cow, the owner explained to me, not something to be made into shoe leather. Serpents, as these painted naga or serpent stones beneath a peepal tree may testify, continue to play significant roles in folk Hinduism, often in connection with women's rights, goddesses, and fertility. Myths, rites, and festivals throughout India find a place for serpent lore and symbolism, and the All India Festival, Snake's Fifth, is one of the most popular holidays. Women set out saucers of milk for snakes, offer rice, flowers, burning camphor to please them. Children get up early to sing songs of greeting to all the snakes who might dwell in the neighborhood, and on the streets ascetics charm snakes by the basketful. Sometimes temples are dedicated to certain snakes, as here in a western Indian town where the festival attracts tens of thousands and assumes the proportions of a major fair with markets and amusements. The main attraction is the snake handlers, who arrive with scores of the highly venomous Indian cobra, their poison fangs intact. Once loosed from their clay pots, the cobras are teased by rolling pots and controlled by their tails or by bamboo poles. The cobras respond to the revolving pots by swaying in their upreared defense posture, just as they do to the motions of the traditional flute player. Behind this rather degenerate sideshow is the belief that the cobra, for all its deadly potency, is a gentle creature, a divine being, one to be worshipped and not harmed. The wide hood of the Indian cobra has the famous spectacle marks, or eyes. And in Hindu iconography, this hood is often the guardian of Lord Vishnu or of Lord Shiva's linga. Shiva or the goddess Kali are often garlanded with cobras, and Vishnu himself sleeps on the great cosmic serpent. In mentioning these great Hindu deities, we come to that complex interaction between the superstructure and the ground structure of Hinduism, an interaction that has gone on for several millennia as it goes on still today. An interaction between what has been called the great tradition of Hinduism, of all Indian Hinduism, carried on the vehicle of the Sanskrit language, principally, although not exclusively, and a variety of little traditions, of regional parochial traditions that are carried by vernaculars such as Tamil, Bengali, Marathi, and a dozen other languages. This interactivity goes on as, in this case, an age-old local serpent festival contributes unique dimensions to an all-Indian phenomenon, while conversely, the Hindu great tradition imposes itself upon the local expression, finds this imposition in the Sanskrit names and episodes, in the wider Indian festival calendar, in myth ritual links which order, which assimilate, which legitimize this folk expression into a universal faith. And Hinduism is thus an amalgam of many such exchanges. For a further dimension, let us consider women's rights in Hinduism, an area that has just recently begun to excite the attention of scholars. High caste men have borne for centuries the responsibility for transmitting the eternal Vedic texts. And in this home, women are not permitted to overhear recitations of the Vedas. In this, another urban home of a wealthy Orthodox Brahmana, complicated rites with recitations from the Puranas are done entirely by men. And men only have the ritual labors in these elaborate ceremonies for the dead. And the working world of these learned Benares Pundits is entirely masculine. By contrast, here in a North Indian village domestic rite, there is a lively balance, actually a noisy competition between the male priests invited from a nearby town, reciting aloud mantras from the standard Sanskrit texts for this ceremony, and the women we see here in the background, who look on and listen, but simultaneously sing in dialect Hindi their own standard chants and songs for this ceremony, under the direction of 3 scheduled caste former untouchable women. The difference is that the bewildering variety of women's ritual activity goes largely unrepresented textually. It survives in vernacular oral traditions, just like the myths and legends that are passed from mother to child. The men, whether priests or laymen, tolerate women's rights, but take little or no interest in them. There are so many vows, rites, and festivals that are performed solely by women that often their basic functions are unknown to men. Yet these rites are entirely necessary, and the cohesion of the family, the health and welfare of each member of the family, particularly of the males, in fact, the health of society at large, is dependent upon the vows, rites, and behavior of the women. The more one looks beneath the superstructure of the Sanskrit tradition of Hindu rites and festivals, the more one sees that it is the women whose constant ritual labors cement together the domestic ceremonial year and the community festival calendar. The complexity of these tensions, interactions and fusions of rural-urban, regional-universal, vernacular Sanskritic, masculine-feminine, high caste, low caste traditions may be further illustrated by this day-long festival, entirely for women, that I filmed in Benares. I don't pretend to understand it, as typically it just happened suddenly. I knew nothing about it in advance, and no one participating could interpret its meaning, beyond the fact that on this day of the year, women do all this for the protection of their children. It is a festival of sixes, similar to another women's festival of 16s, performed for the long life of one's husband. The day is the 6th of the dark half of the lunar month of Bhadrapada. These women have fasted for a lunar day prior to the gathering. They have bathed and come through the lanes of the market, each buying 6 little clay birds painted red and white, 6 stalks of grass, some leaves and grains and flowers and fruits. Hired musicians accompany some parties of women down to the banks of an ancient temple tank, where the women sit by families in circles of 12 to 20. When they reach the temple tank, they sit down and arrange teepee-like structures of the long grass stalks, the leaves, and the jasmine. And scores of little clay pots are placed as offerings, with grains on leaves, with fruits, and lighted incense. Butter lamps are waved before the leafy altar, and the red birds are placed facing that altar. Then the women begin recitations, each of them telling 6 stories about children whose lives were saved from some danger or illness. At least one of the 6 tales involves a bird.
तो उनका माई कहें कि बेटा तू यही पैरे चल जा अपन घरे, आज हम तुके रोकब नहीं। वही पैरे बहू जब लौट के आवत हैं तो कहार से कहलीन कि जरा हमर ससुर पोखरा खनैले हन।
Then after each of the 6 stories, everyone in the circle throws red flowers on the leaf altar and turns to hear the next recitant. The women continually come through the whole day, in groups of families and relatives. Now I am told that this is a generally low-caste festival. But here there are women from most of the castes of Benares, including Brahmanas. And I am told that this is a local festival, unknown elsewhere. Yet there are intriguing indications that this festival, containing not a word of Sanskrit and meaningless to local pundits, may be part of a tradition of a wider, if not universally Indian recognition of the goddess Shasti, the 6th. Shasti Devi is worshipped in various parts of India, in various months, but seldom as here in the dark half. She is, like Shitala Mata, the smallpox goddess, propitiated because she may be malevolent, taking life at her bidding without explanation. For Shasti may be the personification of puerperal or childbed fever, which usually and frequently strikes about the 6th day after delivery of an infant. Like Shitala Mata, she is thanked if she has spared lives, implored to relent if she has taken them. But the women participating were not able to connect Shasti Devi to their rite with 6 birds. In fact, if any goddess was mentioned, it was Lakshmi, the benevolent goddess and consort of Vishnu. The scene was diffuse, again, typically, as the day was Friday, special to Lakshmi, and attention to her nearby temple was melding into the festival of 6s. I mention all of these details as an indication of the soft focus that prevails more often than not where the undulative phenomena of living Hinduism are concerned. Another illustration of the interpenetration of the superstructure and the ground structure of Hinduism may arrive if we look to the sectarian divisions of Hinduism. It is easily said that there are 3 basic traditions across India: the Shaivas, who are the devotees of Lord Shiva, the Vaishnavas, who are devotees of Lord Vishnu, and the latter, Vishnu, being or gaining devotion primarily through his incarnations as Rama or Krishna, and the worshippers of the goddess in the form of Parvati, consort of Shiva, Lakshmi, consort of Vishnu, Durga or Kali, or a host of other names. Those who understand the supreme cosmic principle as feminine creative energy as Shakti are known as Shaktas. And when we turn now to the configurations of the Tantras, we understand something of this softened focus, the blurred edges that come upon Hinduism and Hindu phenomena. The Tantric tradition is largely a system of rites and spells designed to purify the mind and body, to transform the mind and body into a divine cosmos. From origins in the 6th century, centers of Tantrism spread in medieval India, in various parts of India. And from these centers, with their secret guru-to-disciple teachings, there were diffused into Hinduism at large tantric rites, doctrines, spells, largely counter to Brahmanical traditions. But the significant contribution of Tantrism is in its personal rediscovery of the body as the locus of the divine, as the totality of the cosmos itself. The Tantric tradition is divided into two paths today. The so-called right-hand path, in many ways indistinguishable from the practices of traditional yoga, with traditional bhakti or devotion for the goddess, and the left-hand path, a path of bhoga or enjoyment, sensuality, a dangerous path recommended only for those few adepts who can tread the razor's edge and seek liberation by breaking the normal moral and religious codes. These men belong to a community of the left-hand path, devoting their lives to spiritual exercises, sadhanas. The mahant, or leader of this community, performs a daily ritual meditation involving 108 offerings with mantras for each. There is also the tradition that a devotee passes through successive stages by means of sadhanas. The pashu is literally a domestic animal, the common masses who worship the goddess in image form. The vira is the hero who identifies with Lord Shiva himself. And thirdly, the highest state is that of divya, the divine transcendence beyond all disciplines. These men consider themselves to be viras, left-hand adepts, and they regard tantric devotees of the right-hand path as mere sheep and cattle. They face here a representation of the goddess being made of white and red flowers arranged in the pattern of the female genitals. Beside is the staff, the trident of Shiva, and the jackal. And offerings are now made by these tantric devotees to the goddess here before us. Offerings of the traditional 5 forbidden products: mansa and matsya, meat and fish, offered and then consumed by the devotees; madhya and mudra, madhya being the wine or intoxicating beverage, and mudra being ambiguously parched grain or ritual gestures; and fifthly, maithuna, ritual intercourse that is accomplished either symbolically or with a female partner. This female partner must be ritually transformed into the goddess, for she becomes the liberating Shakti, cosmic energy, while the male, by her presence, becomes Lord Shiva. Maithuna represents the goal of Tantrism, for it symbolizes the eradication of opposites, of maleness and femaleness, of spirit and matter, in a divine androgyny. Shiva himself, we see, is androgynous, both male and female. In Tantric Yoga, the realization of divine androgyny depends too upon the raising of the Kundalini, a coiled serpent, which is at once the goddess Kali and the latent feminine energy within every being, raised from the base of the spine up through increasingly powerful centers in the body. The body, which is homologized to the 7-layered cosmos, has 7 chakras, or wheels, including the 1,000-petaled lotus at the top of the skull. Release is attained when the serpent power reaches the zenith of the cosmic body. The symbolism of the cave womb deep in the Earth Mother is also well understood. And this devotee is meditating in lotus posture beside an image of the goddess. An elaborate altar, the canopied goddess flanked here by two human skulls and the wooden sandals of ancient gurus placed before her, tears streaming down the face of this devotee as he worships. At dawn in the hills high above the Ganges, scores of devotees rest after a boisterous all-night worship of the goddess. And this garlanded jackal faces an offering fire. This man has been coming regularly to his tantric hill retreat for some 40 years. And this man, a Brahmana lawyer from a city, comes every year during his vacation to sit here in a tiny dark shrine chanting his Sanskrit text before a yantra. The yantra, like the mandala, being a meditative diagram, an image of the cosmos itself. This Sri Yantra has 9 interpenetrating triangles, 5 pointing down, 4 pointing up, being a diagram of the union of male and female and leading the meditator to the central transcendent point and its mystical syllable. You will have noticed that we have traveled in our illustrations from a basic recognition of sacred fields of force in cosmic elements, in plants and animals and beings, gods and goddesses, to a highly sophisticated myth-ritual system in which man himself is the field of force, is the cosmos, is the deity. And yet in no way have we extended beyond the frontiers, the phenomenal range of Hinduism. On the contrary, we have scarcely begun to describe this extraordinarily flexible religious system. Now, not many Hindus engage in the traditionally forbidden erotic mysticism of the left-hand tantras, and yet tantrism is pervasive in Hinduism. For that matter, not many Hindus recite stories about children and birds, or handle cobras, or tie threads around trees, and yet all of these phenomena are included. There is no single rite or creed or practice or doctrine that is definitive for the Hindu, that rules out behavior or belief. Everything is included. To repeat, if the universe is divine utterance, then nothing may be ignored or left out. Everything is alive with possibility, the possibility of basic assistance, the possibility of renewed life, the possibility of divine transcendence. In the past, Western studies of Hinduism have tended to overemphasize the literary and doctrinal distinctions, underemphasize the contributions of folk religion with its acolyte traditions of magic and astrology. This program and selected dimensions of the Hindu tradition to follow intend to provide a more balanced appreciation of multiform grassroots Hinduism, to enable us to understand when we come to a village in Western India, for example, and find there a crude figure of a buffalo, an image that goes unrepresented in the great literary tradition of Hinduism, whose counterpart is not to be found among the temple and festival routines, and whose very name is unknown to the people of Benares or Delhi or Madras. Yet this is nevertheless the Lord of this place. The people who worship him as village god, as family god or personal deity are Hindus. Their religious experience and expressions are part, a small but a vital part, of living Hinduism.